You stand in your room or your living space and you look at the mess, and something in you just shuts down. It's not that you don't want it to be clean. You do. You actually want it desperately. But the act of cleaning itself feels impossible, overwhelming, like you're being asked to climb a mountain when you can barely get out of bed. And then comes the shame. You think there's something wrong with you, that you're lazy, that you lack discipline, that other people can do this easily, so why can't you? But what if the problem isn't laziness at all? What if the problem is psychology? What if your brain is working against you in ways you don't even realize? Let's start with something called executive dysfunction. Executive function is your brain's ability to plan, organize, initiate tasks, and follow through. It's what gets you from point A to point B. It's what lets you break a large task into manageable steps and execute them. And for many people, executive dysfunction makes cleaning feel impossible. When you have executive dysfunction, whether from ADHD, depression, anxiety, or simply chronic stress, your brain struggles to initiate action. You can see the mess. You know what needs to be done, but there's a disconnect between knowing and doing. It's like your brain recognizes the task but can't translate that into action. Scientists call this task initiation failure. Your prefrontal cortex, the part of your brain responsible for planning and action, isn't firing properly. This is crucial to understand. It's not willpower. Willpower is overrated anyway. This is neurology. Your brain literally isn't sending the signals that create motivation and action in the way it should, and no amount of guilt or shame is going to fix a neurological problem. Let's talk about something else: decision fatigue. Cleaning isn't actually one task, it's hundreds of micro decisions. Do I start with the floor or the desk? Do I organize or just throw things away? Where does this go? Should I wash this or donate it? Your brain has to make decision after decision after decision. And when you're already depleted from work, from life, from just existing, your decision-making capacity is exhausted. Research shows that we have a limited amount of decision-making energy each day. The more decisions you make throughout the day, the worse your decision-making becomes. This is why successful people often wear the same thing every day or eat the same breakfast. They're conserving their decision-making energy for things that matter. But cleaning requires so many decisions that your brain just says no. It's easier to avoid it than to deplete yourself further. Here's another piece of it: perfectionism and all-or-nothing thinking. You look at your space and you think, I need to clean everything. The whole room needs to be perfect. This isn't just a preference. This is a cognitive distortion. Your brain is telling you that partial cleaning doesn't count, that anything less than perfect is failure. So faced with an impossible standard, you don't start at all. All-or-nothing thinking is common in people with anxiety, depression, and perfectionist tendencies. You can't do it perfectly, so you don't do it at all. And this creates a trap. The mess gets worse, which makes the task feel even more impossible, which makes you even less likely to start. It becomes a cycle. The solution isn't to become less of a perfectionist necessarily. It's to rewire how you think about cleaning. To understand that cleaning 10% of your room is not a failure, it's progress. But your brain has to learn this. Let's discuss something psychological that people don't often talk about: emotional attachment to objects and spaces. Your living space isn't just physical, it's emotional. Objects carry memories. They represent possibilities. That stack of papers might have important things in it, so you can't throw it away. Those clothes represent who you used to be or who you want to be. Your space becomes emotionally loaded, and that makes it harder to organize or discard anything. This is amplified if you experienced scarcity or loss in your past. If you grew up without enough, you might struggle to get rid of things because what if you need it someday? If you've experienced loss, objects become repositories for memories. Your space becomes a museum of your life, and clearing it feels like erasing parts of yourself. Now let's talk about depression. Depression is insidious because it masquerades as laziness. When you're depressed, everything feels heavier. Your body feels heavier. Your thoughts move slower. Your motivation evaporates. And cleaning is one of the first things to go because it requires sustained effort and doesn't provide immediate reward. Depression also affects your sense of future. When you're depressed, the future feels distant and uncertain. So cleaning your space, which is an investment in future comfort, feels pointless. Why clean today if tomorrow doesn't feel real? Why organize if you're not sure you'll be here to enjoy it? And here's something crucial. Depression also affects your executive function. It impairs the same brain systems that initiate action. So when someone with depression struggles to clean, it's not because they're lazy. It's because their brain chemistry is literally making initiation harder. Let's talk about overwhelm. Overwhelm is a psychological state where your brain perceives too much input or too many tasks and it basically shuts down. It's a protection mechanism. Your nervous system is saying, too much, can't process, shutting down. When you look at a messy room, your brain might perceive it as thousands of tasks instead of one task with steps. Papers everywhere, clothes everywhere, dishes, clutter, dust. Your brain sees chaos, perceives threat, and goes into shutdown mode. In shutdown mode, you can't act, you can only freeze. This is why breaking tasks into smaller steps is actually effective. Not because you lack discipline, but because it reduces the overwhelm. Instead of clean the room, it becomes pick up the clothes from the floor. That's manageable. That doesn't trigger shutdown. Here's something neuroscientific. Low dopamine. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's crucial for motivation, pleasure, and reward anticipation. When your dopamine levels are low, which happens with depression, ADHD, chronic stress, and other conditions, tasks that don't provide immediate reward feel impossible. Cleaning is a task with delayed reward. You clean now, but the payoff comes later. When your dopamine is low, you're drawn to tasks that provide immediate reward: scrolling, watching videos, anything that hits quick. Your brain is literally seeking dopamine, and cleaning doesn't provide that hit. Additionally, if you live in your space all the time, the reward of a clean space becomes normalized. Your brain doesn't register it as novel or rewarding because you see it every day. So there's no dopamine hit to motivate you. Let's discuss something else: sensory sensitivity. For some people, particularly those with ADHD or autism, sensory input is overwhelming. The texture of cleaning supplies, the smell, the sound of scrubbing, the visual chaos of a messy room. These sensory experiences might be genuinely distressing, not just unpleasant, and your brain is protecting you by making you avoid them. This isn't weakness. If sensory input is genuinely overwhelming to your nervous system, your brain will naturally avoid it. You're not being lazy. You're being protected by a nervous system that's responding to genuine distress. Let's talk about shame and avoidance cycles. Here's how it works. Your space gets messy. You feel shame about it. Shame is such an uncomfortable emotion that you avoid looking at or thinking about the mess. You keep the door closed. You don't invite people over. You actively avoid the space. But avoidance actually makes shame worse. The longer you avoid it, the bigger it becomes in your mind. And shame is paralyzing. When you feel ashamed about something, you don't want to look at it. You don't want to deal with it. You just want it to go away. But the only way it goes away is to face it. And shame makes facing it feel impossible. Here's what happens. The shame says you're a bad person for letting it get this bad. And your brain believes it. So even if you wanted to clean, you'd be doing it from a place of shame and self-punishment. And tasks done from shame are harder to sustain. You do it for a while, but you're hating yourself the whole time. Eventually, you burn out and the cycle starts again. Let's discuss procrastination from a psychological perspective. Procrastination isn't about time management. It's about emotion regulation. You procrastinate on cleaning not because you're bad at managing time, but because cleaning triggers negative emotions. Overwhelm, shame, disgust, anxiety about how bad it is. Procrastination is your brain's way of avoiding those emotions. So you put it off, and putting it off gives you temporary relief from those emotions. The relief reinforces the procrastination. Next time, procrastination feels like the right choice because it worked last time. You've trained your brain that avoidance equals feeling better, at least temporarily. Here's another psychological factor: object permanence and out of sight, out of mind. If your mess is hidden behind closed doors, in a closet, under the bed, your brain doesn't register it as urgent. It's not in your visual field, so it's not triggering your stress response as much. This is why some people can function in a messy space as long as it's contained. But here's the problem. Just because you can't see the mess doesn't mean your brain isn't registering it. Studies show that environmental clutter increases cortisol levels, your stress hormone, even if you're not consciously thinking about it. So you might feel stressed and not understand why. It's your brain responding to the mess you're not even looking at. Let's talk about energy and chronic fatigue. Cleaning requires energy, physical energy to move and do the work, but also mental and emotional energy. When you're chronically fatigued from work, from life stress, from depression, from illness, you don't have energy reserves to spend on non-essential tasks. And to your brain, cleaning feels non-essential. Survival tasks come first. Everything else is secondary. This is why people often clean when they're in a manic episode or when they're avoiding something else. Suddenly they have energy, but when that energy is depleted, cleaning becomes impossible again. Here's something important: ADHD and time blindness. People with ADHD often have something called time blindness. They don't perceive time the way other people do. For them, time is either now or not now. There's no sense of urgency about future consequences. So the fact that cleaning would make them feel better later doesn't motivate them now. Additionally, ADHD brains are motivated by interest and novelty, not by should. You should clean, but should has no power over an ADHD brain. The brain wants interesting, and cleaning isn't interesting. So it won't happen unless the ADHD brain finds a way to make it interesting, like listening to music or a podcast, or setting a timer to make it a game. Let's discuss something about your environment itself. If your living space doesn't feel like yours, if you're renting and feel temporary, if the space is associated with stress or trauma, you're less likely to invest in cleaning it. Your brain is saying, "This isn't mine. Why would I care for something that isn't mine?" Similarly, if you live alone and no one sees your space, there's no social accountability. Human beings are social creatures. We're motivated by what others think of us. But if no one is coming over, that motivation disappears. Your brain is asking, what's the point? Here's something psychological about reward and reinforcement. Cleaning is a task with no immediate reward. You do hours of work and at the end, you have a clean room. That's nice, but it's not a hit of dopamine. Compare that to scrolling social media, where every scroll gives you a little hit of novelty and validation. Your brain has been trained by technology and modern life to expect immediate rewards. Cleaning is old school, effort now, reward later. Your brain doesn't know how to be motivated by that anymore. Let's talk about something deeper: what a messy space might actually be communicating psychologically. Sometimes a messy space is a sign of depression. Sometimes it's a sign of ADHD. Sometimes it's a sign of rebellion, your subconscious saying no to control or perfectionism. Sometimes it's a sign of being overwhelmed by life. Your messy space isn't random. It's communicating something. And if you only focus on the cleaning without understanding the message, you'll clean it up and it'll get messy again. You have to address the underlying psychological issue. Here's what's important to understand. You are not lazy. Laziness is a judgment, and it's usually wrong. What you are is struggling with psychology and neurology. You're struggling with executive function. You're struggling with emotion regulation. You might be struggling with depression or ADHD or anxiety. You might be overwhelmed. You might be depleted. And none of those things are character flaws. They're real obstacles, and they require real solutions. So what can you do? First, stop expecting yourself to clean like someone without these obstacles. That's not fair to you. Second, break cleaning into the smallest possible steps. Not clean your room. Pick up the shirt on the floor. That's one task. Do that. Then the next smallest task. Third, try to make cleaning slightly rewarding. Listen to music. Set a timer and make it a game. Invite a friend over and clean together. Change your environment slightly so your brain registers novelty. Fourth, address the underlying psychological issue. If you're depressed, that needs treatment. If you have ADHD, that needs support. If you're overwhelmed, you need help reducing what's on your plate. Cleaning is a symptom. The mess is a symptom. The real issue is deeper. Fifth, practice self-compassion. Your brain is trying to protect you. Your avoidance makes sense given what you're dealing with. It's not a moral failing. It's a psychological response to real obstacles. And finally, understand that progress isn't linear. You might clean your space and then it gets messy again. That's not failure. That's life. The goal isn't perfection. The goal is compassion for yourself, for your brain, for your struggle. You're not broken. You're not lazy. You're struggling with real psychological obstacles, and understanding that is the first step toward change.